The Galactic Empire had ruled for centuries, spreading its influence across countless star systems. Emperor Vorn sat on his throne, proud of the Empire's achievements. His armies were feared across the galaxy, and no species had dared to challenge their power in generations. Admiral Xaran, one of the Emperor's most trusted commanders, was known for leading the Empire's fleets in battles that always ended in swift victories. He had been the architect of many conquests, and his success had only fueled his confidence. One day, the Empire's scouting ships detected a new star system in the outer reaches of the galaxy. A planet within this system appeared to be thriving with life, but surprisingly, it had not yet been mapped by the Empire. The planet, known to its inhabitants as Earth, showed signs of intelligent life, though the scouts' initial scans labeled it as technologically inferior. In the Imperial War Room, Admiral Xaran studied the holographic display of Earth with a casual smirk. To him, this was just another minor world waiting to be conquered. The Emperor had ordered rapid expansion, and Earth seemed like the perfect target. Your reports show that this planet is populated by a species called humans. Xaran asked one of his officers, his voice calm yet commanding. Yes, Admiral, the officer replied, nodding. They have some level of technology, but they are far behind us. They've never even left their own solar system. Xaran scoffed. Typical. Primitive species always think they're the center of the universe. Let's show them how small they really are. He walked over to the large viewport of his command ship, staring out into the vastness of space. He was certain this would be an easy conquest, like so many before it. The Emperor demanded more territory, and Xaran would deliver. The next day, Xaran prepared a fleet for the mission. Several heavily armed starships, including the Razor***, his flagship, were outfitted for the journey. The fleet was designed to show overwhelming force. There would be no need for negotiation. The humans would either surrender or be destroyed. As the fleet entered hyperspace, Xaran's thoughts turned to the planet Earth. According to his scouts, the humans had divided themselves into various nations and fought amongst themselves. They weren't united. That would be their downfall. Xaran believed that fear would do most of the work. A show of strength would force them to submit without a fight. The fleet arrived near Earth's orbit, its massive warships casting dark shadows over the blue and green planet below. Xaran stared down at Earth from his command center, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. He had expected the humans to panic at the sight of his fleet, but the planet's surface seemed calm. There was no immediate response, no sign of fear. Open a communication channel, Xaran ordered. Let them know their time has run out. A loud beep echoed through the ship's control room as the communication link was established. Xaran's voice was cold and authoritative as he delivered his message to Earth. This is Admiral Xaran of the Galactic Empire, he began. You are now under the rule of the Empire. Surrender immediately, or face complete annihilation. There was a long pause after Xaran's declaration. For a moment, he thought the humans hadn't even heard him. But then, a response came through the speakers, a voice, firm and unafraid. This is your only warning. Run. Xaran froze, disbelief crossing his face. Run. Who were these humans to issue a warning to him, the conqueror of worlds? His officers exchanged confused glances, unsure of how to react. Xaran's smirk returned, but this time it was darker, more malicious. They think they can threaten us, he growled. Let's show them what happens when you challenge the Galactic Empire. Admiral Xaran stood at the command deck of his flagship, the Razor***, staring out at Earth through the large viewing window. His fleet had taken position in Earth's orbit, an intimidating display of power that had brought countless planets to their knees before. But this planet, this Earth, was silent. After the humans had sent their mysterious message, this is your only warning. Run *. There had been nothing more. No attempt to communicate further, no signs of panic from the planet below. It was as if they were daring the Galactic Empire to strike first. Zaran clenched his fists, his mind racing. These humans were either incredibly foolish or incredibly brave. Either way, they would soon learn that no one defied the Empire and lived to tell the tale. "Admiral," one of his officers spoke, breaking the silence. "Shall we proceed with the attack?" Zaran turned to face his crew, his eyes burning with a mixture of anger and excitement. "Yes," he said firmly. "Target their major cities. Let's see how long they can stay silent after we reduce their homes to rubble." The fleet's massive guns began to hum as they powered up, preparing to unleash a barrage of energy that would devastate the planet below. Zaran imagined the humans watching in terror as their world was torn apart by the Empire's firepower. But just as the first wave of ships was about to fire, something unexpected happened. "Admiral," shouted one of the tactical officers, "we're detecting movement from the planet's surface. Human ships are launching." Zaran's eyes narrowed as he watched several small craft rise from Earth's atmosphere, heading straight for his fleet. The ships were much smaller than the Empire's warships, and at first glance, they looked weak, outdated even. But there was something odd about their formation, the way they moved together in perfect coordination. "Pathetic," Zaran sneered. "They think they can challenge us with those little toys." He waved a hand dismissively. "Destroy them." The Empire's ships fired, beams of energy lighting up the darkness of space. But to Zaran's surprise, the human ships didn't scatter or fall apart like he expected. Instead, they weaved through the barrage with incredible precision, dodging the Empire's attacks with ease. "They're faster than we anticipated," one of his officers muttered, clearly confused. Zaran watched in silence, his smirk fading. He hadn't expected this. The human ships were far more agile than any species he'd encountered before. Their small size, which he had mocked moments ago, was now proving to be a strength. The Empire's larger, slower warships struggled to keep up with their unpredictable movements. "Admiral, they're flanking us," another officer shouted. Sure enough, the human ships had split into two groups, one drawing the Empire's fire while the other circled around behind the fleet. Within seconds, several Imperial vessels reported critical damage, their shields unable to stop the precise strikes from the humans' weapons. "How is this possible?" Zaran growled, slamming his fist against the console in frustration. "They're supposed to be primitive, but there was nothing primitive about the way the humans fought. They used hit-and-run tactics, attacking from angles that the Empire's ships couldn't defend against. It was as if the humans knew exactly where to strike. As the battle raged on, more and more Imperial ships fell to the humans' relentless assault. Alarms blared throughout the **Razor** as damage reports flooded in. "Admiral, we've lost contact with half the fleet," a panicked officer shouted. Zaran's jaw tightened. This wasn't supposed to happen. He had come here expecting a quick victory, but now his fleet was being torn apart by a species he had underestimated. "Pull back the remaining ships," Zaran ordered through gritted teeth. "Regroup and focus fire on their lead vessels." The Empire's remaining ships tried to rally, concentrating their firepower on the human ships that were causing the most damage. But the humans were too fast, too precise. It was like fighting ghosts. For the first time in his long career, Zaran felt a twinge of doubt. These humans, they weren't just another weak species to be conquered. They were something else, something dangerous. And the worst part was, Zaran realized, they had warned him. *Run. Admiral Zaran paced back and forth across the command deck of the **Razor**, his frustration mounting with every second. The humans were proving to be far more of a challenge than he had ever imagined. His fleet was suffering heavy losses, and the battle was spiraling out of his control. "Admiral, the humans are regrouping," one of his officers reported, his voice filled with tension. "They're preparing for another attack." Zaran clenched his fists. He had underestimated these humans once, but he wouldn't make the same mistake again. "Deploy the remaining fighters," he commanded, his voice cold and sharp. "We need to overwhelm them with sheer numbers." The Empire's fleet released waves of smaller attack ships, hoping to swarm the human vessels and overpower them. Sauron watched as hundreds of his fighters shot towards the human formation, their weapons primed for battle. This time, he was determined to crush the humans beneath the weight of the Empire's forces. But the humans didn't react the way he expected. Instead of retreating or panicking, they moved with the same precision as before. Their ships formed tight formations, maneuvering in perfect harmony to outflank the Empire's fighters. "They're not breaking formation," the tactical officer muttered in disbelief. "It's like they're reading our every move." Sauron frowned, his eyes narrowing as he watched the human ships. It wasn't just that they were fast and agile. They were coordinated in a way he had never seen before. Every maneuver they made seemed calculated, as if they had already anticipated the Empire's strategy. "Impossible," Sauron growled. "No species could be this well prepared." The human ships darted through the swarm of Imperial fighters, picking them off one by one with terrifying accuracy. Within minutes, the once formidable fleet of Empire ships was reduced to nothing but scattered wreckage floating in space. "How are they doing this?" one of Terran's officers asked, his voice trembling with fear. They're not even a galactic power." Sauron's anger flared, but beneath it there was a growing sense of dread. This was no ordinary species. These humans were unlike anything he had ever encountered. Before Sauron could issue another command, the communications officer's voice broke through the tense silence. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." Sauron's brow furrowed. A transmission. After all this, the humans wanted to talk. "Put it through," Sauron ordered, his voice steady, though his mind was racing. The screen in front of him flickered to life, and a human figure appeared. The human was dressed in a simple uniform, not adorned with the pomp and symbols Sauron was used to seeing from other species leaders. The human's expression was calm, even in the face of the destruction they had caused. "This is Captain Reynolds of the Earth Defense Fleet," the human said, his voice firm and measured. "We don't want to fight you, but we will defend ourselves." Sauron sneered at the display. "Defend yourselves. You've already declared war by defying the Galactic Empire." Captain Reynolds didn't flinch. "We warned you, Admiral. We told you to run, but you didn't listen." Sauron felt a spark of anger ignite once again. How dare these humans speak to him as if they were equals, as if they had any authority to issue warnings to the Empire. "Your ships are impressive, Captain," Sauron said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "But the Empire is vast. We have entire fleets larger than this. You've only delayed the inevitable." For a brief moment, Captain Reynolds simply stared at him, as if deciding how to respond. Then, with a calmness that chilled Sauron to his core, the human captain spoke again. "I don't think you understand what's happening here, Admiral," Reynolds said. "This is just a small part of our fleet. We've only sent a few ships to greet you." Sauron's eyes widened, disbelief flooding his mind. He had sent one of the most powerful fleets in the Empire, and yet the humans were claiming that they had only sent a handful of ships in response. "We don't want this fight," Captain Reynolds repeated. "But if you continue, you'll see what humanity is really capable of." Sauron stared at the screen, his mind struggling to process the gravity of the situation. He had come to Earth expecting an easy victory, but now he was faced with the possibility that these humans, these supposed primitives, were far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The transmission ended, leaving Sauron in silence. Around him, his officers were equally stunned, their faces pale and their eyes filled with fear. For the first time in his career, Sauron wasn't sure what to do. Admiral Sauron stood frozen, staring at the empty screen where Captain Reynolds had just issued the human's calm, yet chilling, warning. His thoughts raced as his grip tightened on the edge of the command console. Could it really be true? had they only faced a fraction of humanity's strength. Behind him, the command deck was silent, the once confident officers now exchanging nervous glances. The humans had decimated their fleet, and yet, according to Reynolds, this was just the beginning. "Admiral," one of his officers finally spoke, breaking the tense quiet. "What are your orders?" Sauron didn't respond right away. His mind was still grappling with the reality of the situation. He had been so sure of the Empire's power, so certain that no species could match their might. But now his fleet was in ruins, and the humans were still standing, ready for more. The Empire had never faced an enemy like this. "Admiral," the voice of the tactical officer was more urgent now. "The humans are closing in on our remaining ships. If we don't act now—" "I know." Sauron snapped, his voice filled with frustration. He straightened his posture and took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus. He was still the admiral of the Empire's fleet, and he would not let these humans make him look weak. "Prepare the remaining ships for a full retreat," Sauron ordered. "We'll regroup with the Second Fleet and crush them in one decisive strike." The officers hesitated for a moment, clearly surprised by the command to retreat, but no one questioned him. They knew the situation was dire. "Yes, Admiral," the tactical officer responded quickly. He turned to the others, relaying the order to the remaining ships. Engines roared to life as the surviving Imperial vessels began to pull away from the battlefield, hoping to escape the human onslaught. But the humans were not done. "Admiral, the human ships are pursuing us," one of the officers shouted. The tension in his voice was unmistakable. "They're faster than we anticipated." Sauron's jaw clenched. The humans were relentless, refusing to give them even a moment's respite. He watched the tactical display as the human ships closed in on his retreating fleet, picking off the slower vessels one by one. "Divert all power to the engines," Sauron commanded. "We need to get out of range before they catch us." The remaining Imperial ships pushed their engines to the limit, trying to outrun the human ships. But the human speed and agility were unmatched. One by one, more Imperial ships were lost, their hulls breached by precise strikes from the human vessels. Sauron's fists tightened. He had never felt so helpless, so utterly outmatched. The Empire's advanced technology, their superior numbers, it all seemed meaningless against these humans. "Admiral, our shields are failing," another officer called out, panic in his voice. "We can't hold them off much longer." Sauron's mind raced. If they didn't escape soon, there would be no ships left to retreat. The humans were tearing them apart, piece by piece. In a desperate move, he made a decision he would have never considered before. "Activate the hyperdrive," Sauron ordered. "We're retreating to the nearest Imperial stronghold." The officers exchanged uncertain glances. "But, Admiral, we haven't calculated the proper coordinates." "We cooled." "I don't care," Sauron interrupted sharply. "If we stay here, we'll be destroyed. Engage the hyperdrive now." Reluctantly, the officers obeyed. The **Razor****, and the few remaining ships began charging their hyperdrives, the engines humming as they prepared to jump to faster-than-light speeds. Just as the human ships closed in for another attack, the **Razor***, and the other Imperial vessels disappeared into the void, escaping by the thinnest of margins. Sauron let out a shaky breath as the stars blurred past them. They had managed to escape, but at what cost? His fleet was in ruins, and the humans had made it clear that they were not to be underestimated. He turned to his officers, who were still visibly shaken by the battle. "Prepare a full report on the damage," he said, his voice low and controlled. "We need to regroup and call for reinforcements. This war isn't over." But as he said the words, Sauron couldn't shake the feeling of doubt creeping into his mind. The humans had warned him, and he had ignored them. Now he was left with the bitter taste of defeat and the growing realization that the Galactic Empire may have met its match. For the first time, The Empire had encountered an enemy they couldn't simply crush, and Sauron wasn't sure they could win. Admiral Sauron stood at the center of the briefing room, his gaze fixed on the holographic display in front of him. It showed the damage report from the recent battle. Dozens of Imperial ships destroyed, hundreds more disabled. His once mighty fleet was a shadow of its former self, and all because of a species that, just a short time ago, the Empire had considered insignificant. The door to the room slid open, and General Varix, one of the Empire's top military strategists, entered. His expression was grim, and Sauron could tell by the way he moved that he wasn't bringing good news. "Admiral," Varix began, his voice low, "I've read the reports. The losses are worse than we expected." Sauron clenched his jaw. "The humans," he muttered, more to himself than to Varix. "They were unlike anything we've ever faced." Varix nodded, stepping closer to the holographic display. "I've seen their tactics. It's clear they aren't just strong. They're adaptable. Every time we tried to overwhelm them, they changed their strategy. It's as if they were reading our every move." Sauron frowned, remembering how easily the humans had countered their assaults. "They are clever," he admitted reluctantly, "and their technology. It's not as advanced as ours, but they know how to use it to its fullest potential." Varix tapped a button on the console, bringing up a new display. This one showed the human fleet, smaller than the Empire's but clearly formidable. "Our scouts have gathered more intel on the humans. Their fleet is growing rapidly. They're building new ships at a rate that rivals even our best shipyards." Sauron's eyes widened in disbelief. "Impossible. How could they be producing ships so quickly? They don't have the resources we do." Varix shook his head. "We don't know. All we know is that they're preparing for something big. And after our last encounter, they know how to defeat us." The weight of Varix's words settled over Sauron like a dark cloud. The Empire had always been the dominant force in the galaxy. No species had ever dared to challenge them, let alone defeat them. But these humans had not only fought back, they had won. "We need to act fast," Varix continued. "If we give the humans more time to grow stronger, we may not be able to stop them." Sauron nodded slowly. "I agree. We must strike before they have a chance to prepare, but we can't make the same mistakes as before." Varix looked at him curiously. "What do you suggest?" Sauron took a deep breath, his mind racing. The last battle had shown him that brute force alone wouldn't be enough to defeat the humans. They were too smart, too quick to adapt. No, this time they needed a different approach. "We can't fight them head-on," Sauron said, his voice steady. "Not until we understand more about them. We need to gather intelligence, learn their weaknesses, their vulnerabilities. If we strike at the right moment, we can cripple their defenses before they even know we're coming." Varix raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting a covert operation?" Sauron nodded. "Send spies to infiltrate their ranks. Learn everything we can about their ships, their tactics, their culture. We need to know how they think, how they fight. Only then will we have a chance to defeat them." For a moment, Varix was silent, considering Sauron's words. Finally, he nodded in agreement. "It's risky, but it might be our only option. I'll organize a team of our best operatives. They'll gather the intelligence we need." Sauron felt a flicker of hope. The humans may have won the first battle, but the war was far from over. The Empire was vast, and its resources were nearly limitless. With the right information, they could still turn the tide in their favor. "Good," Sauron said, his voice firm. "We can't let the humans think they've won. The next time we face them, it will be on our terms." Varix nodded, already tapping on his data pad to begin preparations. "I'll see to it, Admiral. We'll gather all the information we can. And then, when the time is right, we'll strike." Sauron watched as the general left the room, his mind already focused on the next phase of their plan. The humans had proven to be a formidable enemy, but they were still just one species. The Empire had faced greater threats before and survived. They would survive this too. But deep down, Sauron couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that the humans were different from any enemy they had ever faced. They had underestimated humanity once, and it had nearly cost them everything. If they made the same mistake again, it might be the end of the Empire as they knew it. The once bustling command center of the Galactic Empire was now a hive of quiet, anxious activity. The loss of the fleet had sent ripples of fear and urgency through the Empire's high command. Admiral Sauron knew that the key to turning the tide lay in understanding their enemy better than they had before. In a darkened room, hidden deep within the Empire's central command, a team of elite operatives prepared for their covert mission. General Varix, who had taken charge of the operation, was briefing the team with the gravity of their task. "You all know what's at stake," Varix said, his voice low but intense. "We've underestimated the humans once, and it nearly cost us everything. This time, we need to know everything about them, how they fight, how they think, and what makes them tick." The operatives nodded, their faces set in determined expressions. They were the best of the best, trained for missions that required the highest level of skill and secrecy. But even they felt the weight of the challenge ahead. "Our primary target," Varix continued, "is a human colony on the edge of their territory. It's heavily fortified, but it's also a hub for their intelligence and research. We need to infiltrate and gather as much data as possible without being detected." One of the operatives, a tall figure named Raxer, spoke up. "What do we know about their defenses?" Varix activated a holographic map of the human colony. "The colony has advanced security systems and patrols, but we've managed to acquire some details about their security protocols. Use this information wisely. Avoid confrontation at all costs." The operatives nodded in understanding. They were well aware of the risks, but their resolve was unwavering. With the briefing complete, they prepared to embark on their mission, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them on the human colony. Meanwhile, on the human side of the galaxy, Captain Reynolds and his crew were busy preparing for their next move. The humans had recovered quickly from the battle, and their preparations for the Empire's possible counterattacks were already underway. In the command center of the Earth Defense Fleet, Reynolds reviewed the latest intelligence reports. His crew had been working tirelessly to analyze the data they had collected from the previous battle and to anticipate the Empire's next moves. "Captain, we've received some disturbing news," one of his officers reported. "There are reports of increased Imperial activity near our borders. It looks like they're planning something." Reynolds frowned, his thoughts turning to the recent encounter. The Empire had been more aggressive than he had expected, and now it seemed they were preparing for another strike. "We need to stay vigilant," Reynolds said, his voice firm. "If they're planning an attack, we have to be ready. Let's increase patrols and reinforce our defenses. We can't afford to be caught off guard again." As the human forces went on high alert, the Imperial operatives were already on their way to the human colony. They approached the planet under the cover of darkness, using stealth technology to avoid detection. Their goal was clear: gather intelligence and return with crucial information that would give the Empire the upper hand. Landing on the outskirts of the colony, the operatives moved swiftly and silently through the shadows. They used advanced cloaking devices to blend into their surroundings, making their way towards the central command building of the colony. Inside the command center, the atmosphere was tense. The operatives had successfully bypassed the outer defenses and were now inside the building, making their way through the maze of corridors towards the main data archives. As they reached the archives, Raxer carefully bypassed the security systems, his fingers working quickly to disable the alarms. The team entered the data room, where vast amounts of information were stored. They began to download files and documents, their mission to uncover the secrets of the human defense strategies and technologies. Suddenly, an alarm blared, piercing through the silence of the data room. The operatives froze, their hearts racing. Someone had detected their presence. "Abort the mission." Varix's voice came through their comms, urgent and commanding. "Get out of there now." The team scrambled to disconnect the data transfer and retreat, their stealthy approach now compromised. They raced through the corridors, pursued by human security forces. The mission was in jeopardy, and they had to make it out alive. Back at the command center, Reynolds received the alert about the breach. "We've got intruders," he announced. "Lock down the facility and deploy security teams immediately." The chase was on, and the operatives had to rely on their training and quick thinking to escape the human defenses. As they fought their way out, they knew they had to return to the Empire with whatever intelligence they had gathered, even if it was incomplete. The damaged Imperial operatives staggered back to their ship, barely escaping the human security forces. Their mission had been partially successful. They had gathered some crucial intelligence, but the incomplete data was far from what Admiral Xarun had hoped for. As they left the human colony behind, they knew the Empire's next move would be crucial in turning the tide of the war. Admiral Xarun paced nervously in the command center of the Empire's flagship, the **Razor****. The operatives' return was imminent, and he was anxious to hear what they had discovered. The battle with the humans had left scars, and Xarun was determined to avoid making the same mistakes again. Finally, the operatives arrived, their faces haggard but resolute. Xarun met them in the debriefing room, his eyes sharp as they recounted their harrowing escape. Raxer, the lead operative, stepped forward to deliver the report. "Admiral," Raxer began, his voice tired but steady, "we encountered heavy resistance, but we managed to extract some critical data. It's not complete, but it will help." Xarun nodded, gesturing for the data to be displayed on the holographic screen. The room fell silent as the information began to unfold. The data revealed detailed plans about the human defenses and their military strategies. It was clear that the humans were preparing for a major confrontation, and their capabilities were impressive. Xarun studied the information, his mind racing. The humans had learned from their previous encounters and had strengthened their defenses. But there were weaknesses, strategic locations that could be targeted, and vulnerabilities in their defense systems. "This is valuable information," Xarun said finally, looking up at his officers. "We can use this to plan a more effective attack. We need to strike their key supply lines and communication hubs. If we disrupt their operations, we can weaken their defenses and force them into a disadvantageous position." Verix, who had been closely following the data, nodded in agreement. "We'll need to execute a series of coordinated strikes. If we hit their supply lines and disrupt their communications, we can create confusion and force them to spread their forces thin." Xarun's gaze hardened with determination. "We have to move quickly. The humans are not waiting for us to make our next move. We need to launch a series of precision attacks to cripple their infrastructure before they can react." Meanwhile, on the human side of the galaxy, Captain Reynolds and his crew were busy preparing for the possible Imperial counterattack. They had anticipated that the Empire would regroup and retaliate, and they were ready. The humans had used the time wisely, reinforcing their defenses and implementing new strategies based on the intelligence they had gathered from the previous encounters. Reynolds gathered his senior officers in the command center. "We've received reports of increased Imperial activity," he said, his voice steady. "They're planning something, and we need to be ready. We've reinforced our defenses, but we should also prepare for a more aggressive stance." The officers nodded, their faces set with resolve. They knew the Empire was a formidable opponent, but they also knew they had the advantage of knowing their own territory. They had the advantage of preparation and the will to fight. As the humans readied their defenses, the Imperial fleet launched their coordinated strikes. Precision attacks targeted supply lines, communication hubs, and critical infrastructure. The Empire aimed to create chaos and force the humans into a defensive posture. The humans responded swiftly. Their systems were designed for rapid adaptation, and they quickly mobilized their forces to counter the attacks. The Empire's strategy had created temporary disruption, but the humans were resilient and well prepared. In the midst of the chaos, Admiral Xarun watched the unfolding battle from his flagship. The attacks had caused significant damage, but the humans were holding their ground. The fight was far from over, and Sauron could see that the humans were not easily defeated. The conflict between the Galactic Empire and humanity had reached a critical juncture. Both sides were locked in a fierce struggle, each testing the other's limits. The Empire's plan had brought the fight to the humans, but it was clear that this was not a war that would be won easily. As the battle raged on, Sauron knew that the outcome of this conflict would determine the future of the galaxy. The Empire had faced many challenges, but this was unlike any they had ever encountered. The humans had proven to be a formidable adversary, and the struggle was only beginning. Sauron's gaze hardened as he watched the battle unfold. The Empire would not back down. They would fight with everything they had, determined to prove their dominance. And as the conflict continued, both sides prepared for the next chapter in their epic struggle for supremacy.